Hi, everyone, and thank you for being here for this exciting collaborative reading. So, this is a collaborative reading between One Art, a Journal of Poetry, and Quartet. And so, I am joined by Quartet's uh, co-editor, Jane Miller. I know that Linda Blasky wanted to be here, but unfortunately is not able to. Also, sadly, not able to join us is one of our featured readers, Sue Ellen Thompson, who isn't feeling well. I know she's very sad, but we're going to have her back for a reading in the not too distant future. So, what can I say? Hopefully, people already know One Art. We publish daily, probably best known for the rapid response time and Jane Kenyon-esque poems, accessible, approachable poems, poems that are down to earth and democratic and have a lot of access points. Um, Jane, can you please say a few words about Quartet and the impetus behind starting a lit mag for women over 50
Well,
and your
that's an
mission?
easy A. Linda Blasky, who is the editor, um, we're good poet pals, among other things, and she had long wanted to start a literary journal for women over 50. And so it really sprang from her desire that we were able to put it together. We started the journal on January 2021 and have been going strong since then. We've changed things in the journal from time to time. We went from 4 issues to three now, winter, spring, summer, and fall. Um, and we typically get about 290 submissions for each issue, and we feature 21 poems. So it is all the poems are read by three editors. We usually have a guest editor included with Linda and I, and it's a process. But we really feel it's important that we be the ones who vet the work that we want in the journal. We don't want to have other eyes on it, so it's a labor of love. And we also feature an editor's prize every 18 months, and we have artist statements that accompany the poems in our journal, which really help give our readers better insight into what interests the writers that appear in the journal and where they have found their influences and inspiration as writers.
That was terrific, Jane. I that very succinct too. I can tell that you have made that pitch quite a number of times. I feel like I'm never quick to say things the same way about One Art. So yeah, you've really got it down as far as the mission statement, which is good. And it also sounds like you're good sports about the collaborative aspect of having multiple editors and working with a guest editor.
You know what? That's really important because at one point we were four in the journal, and two of our editors chose to move on. And we really felt that because Linda and I don't always like the same poetry, but we do have um, similar tastes. So we like to have people who bring a different edge to the journal through being a guest editor. I think that helps keep the journal both sharp and loose at the same time. So.
Nice. I have heard related statements from folks that work with an editorial team, and when it's working well, it's great. What can I say? It's very cool, and then you get to celebrate wins together, which is nice. And so yeah, very, very positive. So we'll take questions and general Q&A for the journals and then also our readers after the featured readings. So let us proceed with featured readings. Jane and I will take turns doing intros. Let me just give a quick bio for Jane since I failed to do that. So Jane C. Miller is author of Canticle for Remnant Days that came out in 2024, and co-author of Walking the Sunken Boards from 2019. Winner of the Naugatuck River Review. Am I saying that right? I might not
Yep.
be. Yes, excellent. Um, so that narrative poetry contest, as well as two Delaware Division of the Arts fellowships, and her work has appeared in many journals, including Rhino, Colorado Review, Whale Road Review, and buses in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, through the Poetry in Transit program. I love when they do that. That's so cool. I love this sort of putting poetry on whatever things in public spaces. It's just such a neat idea. There was a DC one where they were like putting haiku on, like, I don't know, I feel like they were doing it on sidewalks. Um, in any case, I love it. And of course, Jane is co-editor of Quartet as well, you know. So I'll put some links in the chat. And then about our featured readers. So real quick, I'll just mention who is here and reading. So who is not here is Sue Ellen Thompson, sadly. And I wanted to mention too that I'm a huge fan of Sue Ellen, and I highly encourage you to look up her poems, especially, oh, I'm gonna get them wrong right on the spot here. I really first learned about her work from the Writer's Almanac way back in the day when I was first sort of getting serious about poetry. As we speak, I'm trying to look up the names so I get them right, but I'll drop a link in the chat. So her poem Wednesday, or sorry, Wednesdays, which you can read here, is one of them. And then there's a poem that I know it's like No Pets, or Pets is in the title, but it's a killer poem. Anyway, it really got me into Sue's work way back when. So unfortunately, Sue isn't able to be here because she's not feeling well, but we will have her for a future event. So with us today, we have Melody Wilson, Annette Sisson, Cora McCann Liderbach, and Sarah Dickenson Snyder. And first up, Jane, how about you introduce Cora?
Be happy to. Hi, Cora. It's nice to see you. Cora McCann Liederbach is from Cleveland, Ohio, and her work has appeared in numerous journals, including Quartet, One Art, Painted Pebble, Jackdaw Review, Gyroscope Review, Sheila Na Gig Online, and Artemis. She is a 2022 Best of the Net nominee and has a chapbook, Through Line, from Finishing Line Press in 2024. Cora, welcome.
Thank you. Shall I start?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
My first poem is from Crab Creek Review, called Wings. The robin flies over snowy yards, lands in the road, cocking its head the way robins do, searches for worms. It's a kind of day, 44 degrees, drizzle rippling rings and puddles, sky blending with exhaust smudged snow that keeps most humans nesting in armchairs by the window. But a robin's got to eat, and the doctor says you've got to walk. Leaves pale as postal wrap cling to alders. A string of old lights festoons a small pine. Desiccated hydrangeas punctuate rain-dark trees. A southwest wind weaves an oak's topmost branches through the sky's loom. Now, a robin who's no longer a robin sits at the tarmac's edge, motionless ball of feathers and fluff, beak open, eyes shut. You watch a wing waft up, burst of orange, salutes its passing brilliance. Pray that your own fledgling, winging unknown skies after countless false starts, meets mercy wherever he lands. Thank you. This next poem is called Jurassic Bark. You're sure a sturgeon prowls in the lake that turns from glass to churn to chop below our condo. You long to rustle and release the prehistoric beast. Young sturgeon, loosed yearly in rivers, migrate to Lake Erie to repopulate her. Their barbels tickle riverbeds for snails, worms, and crayfish. Bodies wear bony scoots unchanged from Jurassic times. Sturgeon can live 150 years, grow 20 feet long. Their snouts snuffle muck, swallow zebra mussels. They help fight algae blooms. We've come to love Erie's changing moods. This lake feels like our home. One day I'd like my ashes to rest in her sediment. Always the angler, you yearn for a sturgeon to swallow you. Roam Erie's benthic zone. Leave some ashes to drift into the Niagara River. Tumble her thunder into Lake Ontario. Float eastward on the St. Lawrence. Chill for a spell in her estuary. Then spill into the ancient brine where life began. Thank you. This next poem is a haibun, and I should mention that if you don't know about it, Lake Erie has a monster similar to Nessie in Scotland. She's called Bessie. That's the background. The Erie named her Crooked River. For too long, the Cuyahoga ferried factory oil and debris. The river caught fire in the 60s. Today, she's healed enough to nurture young sturgeon. Hundreds of Clevelanders line the winding waterway, wait for a bucket holding a single juvenile. My husband and I stare at ours, 7 inches long, striped with ancient ridges, fins finely etched. Sweating in the heat, we descend a ramp, release her into the water. With luck, she'll outwit predators like catfish and migrate to Lake Erie, where sturgeon once grew enormous, outlived humans. 18th century sailors reported a fearsome 50-foot livered snake roiling the lake. They named her Bessie. Our small fry, the next Lake Erie monster. Watch her wriggle away. Thank you. This is the poem I had published in Quartet, which is such a beautiful magazine, called Estrangement. Before you were a mom, you wept easily, all night sometimes. Now you haul the schism with your son up aging peaks, dry-eyed, long for sweet, salty release. Where did the tears go? Down a well hallowed by time to form stalactites in your heart's cavern? Did they evaporate as you exhale, collect in clouds, drop to earth, birth rivulets, fuse with streams, merge with rivers, chase gravity, dive headlong into froth? Earth, a mother like you, embraces each wandering tributary, though it chafes, deepens, divides her. Thank you. This poem is an elegy from my brother-in-law called Irish Exit. Call me Dan, not father, you tell everyone. Numinous mind unbound by dogma, you intone ocean of deepest mystery at Mass in our living rooms. Religious about your all brand for breakfast, daily walk, early bedtime. Never take yourself too seriously. Say you race walk like a nervous chicken. Your brown outback hat, good-natured guffaw announced your arrival at family gatherings, from which you disappear at 7 p.m. Born on St. Patrick's Day, you thread our family history with blessings. Marry us, baptize us, baptize our children, treat each of us with dignity. You lose 2 years in seminary to crippling headaches. Everyone poo-poos them until they find the brain tumor. You struggle to recover from surgery, become priest, professor, theologian, then lose your way late in life. Corridors of memory crisscrossing like a maze on you. Hide your repeated falls from family for weeks. Now, brothers, sisters, nieces, and nephews circle your bed, hold your hand, laugh when you say, I don't have to think twice, to spoonfuls of ice cream. A little morphine eases your pain. Only after we bid farewell, travel home to our jobs and families, do you slip your moorings, cast off into that inscrutable sea. Thank you. This is a prose poem that ran in 1uart called Totaled. A jolt, I check my rear view. A man with long gray hair jumps from his Ford, waves his arm, paces. He shouts, my car is totaled, I have nothing. The grill of his Focus sits in the engine. The hood curls like a lip. Headlights smashed in. I exit my Prius, rear bumper dangling, ask about insurance. He tosses, I'm so sorry, over his shoulder, runs off, shedding hat and jacket. I peer in his Ford, stuffed with black garbage bags. My world collapses to the size of a compact car. I imagine hustling meals, showers, a bed. EMS arrives to roll the wreck to the curb. They check my vision. All I see, a man roaming cold November streets in shirt sleeves. Thank you. This is a poem from Gyroscope Review called Why Some People Spend Years in Therapy. Hand me your twisted earbud cords. I love to untangle messes. Free needles threaded to pincushions, snarls from a child's hair. Each night I outsleuth BritBox bodies, sort lies from Leeds to unearth a corpse in Northumberland's hills. Some people are fine skating blind across family's mottled pond. Not me. I long for thaw, want to examine the rubble of troubled union. My therapist says people who spend years in counseling are simply curious about life's journey. I keep slashing at the kelp and twining my propellers, stalling me. Will I ever tease my strand from family's knot, solve our twisted history? Thank you. This poem is about my cousin. It's ekphrastic based on a gorgeous glass statue called Dress Impression with Train by Karen Lamont. We peer at her on a rainy April day at the Toledo Museum of Art. The lady who isn't there, milky gown of molten sand tracing her curves. Hurry under umbrellas to see Caravaggio's card sharps, the friction he painted between Magdalens. Over paninis, you tell us you quit chemo. We're allergic to it. The cancer, vanished, may return. So I'll live until I don't anymore, you say, smile stretching your cheeks. We drive to your home where you can stroll from Ohio into Michigan, admire silversmithed rings, scarf your slow cooker chicken, blueberry tarts, Soon, sun will burnish the male finch's citron. Your husband will snap portraits at the theater. Soon, your pool cover will come off. Grandkids will splash cannonball fountains. But not yet. I'm feeling really good, you say. And my last poem is an abecedarian that came about because I have so much fun with the names of small towns in states like Ohio and Pennsylvania when you're looking at a map. This is called Meandering Across a Map of Ohio. I woke up in Aurora, soaked in a tub in Bath. A tea leaf reader in Ceylon predicted a ring and diamond. I met genius in Eureka, but fled funk and despair. Stared at walls and gypsum, scrimped in hard scrabble, salted money away in Ira. Bought a dairy farm in Jersey, struck gold in Klondike, found a four-leaf clover in Lucky. Quit cigarettes in Marlboro, was surprised in novelty to learn of Orwell's Animal Farm. I picked an apple in paradise, munched it freely in Quaker City, lost my way in Reminderville, trespassed into Sodom, escaped to Triumph, fell apart in Union, when a gentleman from Verona gave me a lotto ticket in Windfall. I sneezed from zinnias pollen, stopped for Botox in Youngstown, ran out of gas in Sewell. Sorry for all the puns, guys.
Oh no, that was fun, Cora. Thank you. That was a great reading. And all the water talk makes sense with Lake Erie. I couldn't help but think of, hopefully you saw it, the John Oliver bit where he was trying to rename, I'll put a link in the chat. He was asking which minor league baseball team wanted to be renamed, and Lake Erie got renamed the Moon Mammoths. So it's worth looking up if you haven't seen, but the link in the chat will show you what their mascot looks like, and it's quite fun.
I
Quite
love
fun, like
that.
Cora's reading.
We do have the Toledo Mud Hens.
That's pretty good too. I mean, minor league baseball is very joyful and I have to say, as someone who I'll go on the record on a recording and say that generally speaking, I would say regular baseball is one of the more boring sports to watch, but minor league baseball, quite fun, quite fun. Lots of engagement. Next up we have Melody Wilson. Melody is a Pushcart nominated poet whose work appears in Nix's Mate, Anti-Heroin Chic, Crab Creek Review, Nell, Rust and Moth, who I always point out is one of the journals who has the aesthetic that I like most. I think they have like a really beautiful aesthetic on their website. First Daily, West Trestle Review, and elsewhere. Her first collection, which I'll share a link to, Madradura, received the 2026 Paul Nemser Prize from a Late Poetry Review. She is a graduate of Pacific University's MFA program and lives in Portland, Oregon, which is a cool place to be. And I don't know about now, but as of maybe like 5 years ago, was, I believe, the youngest city in America. So she is in Portland with her husband Philip and their dog Z, as in Zed. Find more on her website, which I'll share in the chat. Melody, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank everyone for being here today. And also, I just want to do a quick call out. I see people, poets from Poets on the Coast, River Heron Review, Pacific University. It's really wonderful, that thing you guys are doing, Jane and Mark, to bring all of our different communities together. We even have my sister. So I had to choose very carefully the poems today. You all, those of you who know my work, it might be a little bit dangerous to have a sister actually on a reading. So here we go. I'm going to read first a poem that 1art was really important to me. I liked 1art online. And when I very first came back to writing poetry, I just woke up after 20 years of not writing and thought, oh, you're supposed to be writing poetry. And it turns out you don't send poems anymore in an envelope. You put them online. It was all very different. And I found 1art. And they took a couple of them, but I'm going to read, I think, the second one that you took. And my father had a beautiful singing voice. I do not. So I will read a couple of lyrics in this poem, and you will be grateful that I'm not singing them. It's very, very important. This poem is called My Father's Voice. My face was always dirty. I blamed it on the wind or my invisible friend. Mama stretched over the seat, licked her thumb, scrubbed at my grubby cheeks. Facing front again, she lurched into song. Usually, how much is that doggy in the window? My sisters would plead for our father to sing, his smile in the rear view, straight teeth, black mustache, his turn at last. He sang like the best part of the sun, like the Santa Anas that flowed over his arm resting on the door as I walked out on the streets of Laredo. 4 bare-legged girls lined up on the back seat, suddenly silent. The primer red caddy sailed over the ribbon of asphalt that held down the sand. As I walked out in Laredo one day, somewhere there's a layer of time where leather still smells like gasoline, where the Mojave rolls absently by, the song just now falling, weaving itself into wind. So my first book came out in March, and it came out from Lily Poetry Review, as Mark said, and I think he's shared a link. I love the way you're annotating in the links. They're in the chat. It's called Madre Dura, and it deals with my mother and her mother and her mother and myself as a mother. You get the idea. But another early poem that came out for me was in quartet, and it is in the book. It also, I think it's my biggest success to date. It was a weekly special on Verse Daily, which would just blew me out of the water because I thought it was weird. I actually called, I wrote quartet and said, can I edit that? In between their acceptance and their publication. It was like, no. So, because I thought it's too crazy. So here we go. It's Every Morning, Lida. First home I owned after a series of disasters had stood empty for a year. Bobcats peered in as I unpacked, and the howling turned out to be coyotes, not a woman down the road. I stood there, gazing out the window of my own kitchen, when a bird so white, so enormous, stroked by. I could have counted its feathers if I believed it was true. Then gone. Impossible, like the swan on the cover of my big sister's daughter's Mother Goose. Bespectacled granny, smiling, the baby reaching, such an assumption. I was jealous, I admit it, stole into the room when they visited. At 12, I had nothing to do but switch off the lights each night once our parents extinguished themselves. So I swallowed one of her Flintstones vitamins. Brightly colored artifact of care. Then another. Now I know. The bird on the book is just a goose, the old woman probably a carny. Swans make awful noises and each of their toes ends in a claw. It was a long time before I learned young girls are covered in scratches. No one tells you. So during the time that I've been working on Madre Dura, I've been going through a lot of my mother's papers, and there are some old photos. Well, actually, this next poem is about a photograph or a photostat she had in the 1960s. She had she called it not a mimeograph, an old copy machine, and she has a photo or a picture of a photo. It's crazy. Anyway, the photo has written across it, "At the beach." This poem is after that. At the beach. Not even a photo, but a copy of some dim snapshot Xeroxed after her funeral. 50 years later, it's still filed with a list of addresses, some checked, some not, some labeled pallbearer. 14 years old, 2 years as an orphan. My grandmother dominates the picture captioned "At the Beach." Behind her, arms linked, all the adults that remain smile for the camera while this girl, barely 5 feet tall, studies the distance like a prophet or a heretic, tiered, dress unbelted, swollen with sea air. I was not yet 4 when she died. My memories constructed from stories like how she tied my hair in rags to make ringlets. I didn't know she wore them herself. Had only seen her as woman or child, never in between, life washing over her wave after wave. What caught her gaze that afternoon when she thought she had seen the worst and survived? This year, I've lived 4 years longer than she did, traced every part of her life, and nothing would make me snap my fingers to draw her back to the camera. Nothing could make me break the spell of whatever caught her eye that afternoon along the shore. So I also write about myself as a mother in the book, and this one is about a daughter. Although I just love to say as often as possible, I literally don't remember which daughter this is about. I have 3, so they can all claim this one instead of. They don't do that. They don't say this one's about me, this one's about you, but maybe someday they will. At the aquarium, tired of dangling her fingers among anemones, petting sea stars' sandy backs, my daughter points to the octopus. The hall is quiet, so I dangle her over the open pool, tip her fingers in. The octopus, magenta but blanching, sluices to the far side of her acrylic tank, then back. Unfolds 3 pink tentacles, each thick as my wrist. One brushes my daughter's thigh, its tip curling to beckon, come closer. I've never liked hugging strangers. A therapist could explain, but why? I pull my daughter out of reach, and all 3 tentacles pause, rebuffed, roll into the water like tide going out. I wish I'd allowed the embrace, let my daughter know what it's like wrapped in all those arms, the shell of her ear pressed against the heart, not the one thumping landlocked in my chest. 3 wet hearts willing to risk a world for her. So during the course of finishing Madre Dura, one of my sisters was diagnosed with angiosarcoma, and some of the poems toward the end of the book start to turn toward that, her loss. But this poem, which is not in the book, it is about that process. It's coming out in New Ohio Review. I think they're next or the issue after. Super Bloom. After the frost, I tug dahlias up by their spent stalks, brush away the soil, then count. It's always a wonder how one tuber spawns 3, even more. I divide each clump into homely pods, tuck them into boxes, trust they'll come alive again next summer. In Latin, tuber means lump. Doctors radiated one in my sister's breast before seeing its roots wound deep into the surface. When they said it couldn't be stopped, she said about dying, despite myths of survival, dragon's teeth sprouted warriors once, and spindle-pricked girls snap awake at a kiss. Even desert seeds, dormant for decades, embellish bare hills if it rains hard enough. What if we missed the miracle? Couldn't see her erupting magenta and green, delicate ecosystem swept up in a confluence of perfect conditions, countless poppies and bluebells, desert lilies, wild mustard. We could have watched her unfurl day after day, cooing, "Isn't she beautiful?" until she was gone. And then also, what's interesting is that sister, this is a poem that's never even been workshopped. So I'm going way out on a limb here. I wrote it the other day because I'm visiting my sisters in California, and I'll trust you. This is called Carousel. Even now, I roll my eyes and say, "A sister," when the phone rings. Code for everything's about to change. I still can't tell them no. Not you, the oldest, first mother, lawyer, photographer, gone a year next month. Not the second sister I'm visiting today for her birthday, her first year a widow. Our family is more whirlpool than bridge, nothing easy between us, every decision a narrow plank. Like when I asked this sister to be a bridesmaid before asking you. I was out of order, you said, then maligned my lavender cake, white dress. We nearly drowned that year as well, our father walking me down the aisle just months before dying. I never knew you traded bouquet for camera, but this spring, your son sent boxes and boxes of slides from your garage, and today we project a carousel of slides onto the wall. There's your son, 5 years old, our father smiling, your daughter all dressed up and posing in your yard, me on the church steps, baby sister you love anyway. My daughter, a toddler, fingers a ribbon from my veil. Our father's hand rests on my shoulder. Unruly nephews dart among dresses, your camera describing how beautiful we are in your eyes. And finally, because really she has that really took over for the last year. This is a poem that's the last poem in a book about my father that I've actually been writing for 30 years. And it's out there or being a finalist in small contests and being completely ignored in large contests constantly. And I'm just keeping spending the money. Here we go. This is the final poem in that book, Event Horizon. There are nearly as many neurons firing through my sister's mind as galaxies in the universe. And today we learned the cancer has reached her brain, where it's busy hijacking signals. This might explain why the only person she remembers these days is our father, the rest of us having sputtered out. No one reminds her he's dead when she points to the chair beside her bed and says he's smoking and trimming his nails. I'm glad she hasn't. And because I accept the existence of neurons and black holes, I believe he came for my other sisters as well. If they can do it, I can too. The youngest, I should be the one he watches last. He'll sit right over there in his red chair wearing aviators and a plaid shirt, nippers clicking as he waits. He'll tap ash into a tray and hum that old song while my cells shut down one by one. And when there's no one left to remember him, the stub of his Muriel air tip will flare and go out like an exhausted sun. Thank you.
Wow, Melody. That was really incredible and a terrific lesson, I would say, in the right to write category, which is something I'm always grappling with, and sort of how to write about family and people in your life in a way that it's always tricky territory. And maybe that's something we could talk about in the Q&A and community time after. But you do such a good job of just sort of walking that line carefully. So next up, we have Sarah Dickinson Snyder. And Jane, would you like to introduce her?
Yes, I would. Sarah has written, after years in the classroom, she now carves in stone, sculls on the Connecticut River, and rides her bike. Travel opens her eyes. She has 5 poetry collections: The Human Contract from 2017, Notes from a Nomad, which was nominated for the Massachusetts Book Award in 2018, With a Polaroid Camera, 2019, and now now these 3 remain, which was nominated for the Massachusetts Book Award in 2023, and finally To Eve, Nix's Mate Review 2026. Several poems have been nominated for Best of the Net and Pushcart prizes. Works in rattle, verse, and rhino, among others. Sarah, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Jane. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm in a hotel that doesn't have great internet Can you hear me?
Yeah, you
Oh
sound
yeah,
great.
just
Oh,
fine.
okay, good, good. Okay, great. Well, anyway, I just want to say thank you, Mark and Jane, for doing this event. I love both One Art and Quartet, and feel very, very honored and grateful to have had work in both of your journals. And I too have a sister in this Zoom room, so I'm so thrilled that she's here. I didn't know she was going to be here. I haven't looked at my poetry to go like maybe she shouldn't hear that one, but we'll see. Um, so I'm going to start by reading two poems, one that was in Quartet and one that was in One Art. And this one is about mothers as well. Or anyway, my mother comes in. Landing on the moon. Does the moth mistake the outdoor light for the moon? Some mistake the finger pointing to the moon for the moon, that dark rock tethered to us and draws our tides, our blood. How my mother seems tied by some invisible force. In death, a dull humming, as if I've slipped into her wrinkled skin. Let her ghost roost with a rush of wind, unseeable but heard. The moon above silently orbiting, lit only by the sun, no star at its core, just dust turning through space, knitted to me like a shadow, like a haunting, like breath. And this actually is one of my favorite poems I've written, that thankfully you took, Mark, in One Art. And I just love that the one thing I have in common with Taylor Swift is that we share a birthday. So anyway, the poem is called December 13th. Taylor Swift and I have the same birthday. Everyone loves her. Her lyrics so specific, the red scarf she left in her ex-boyfriend's sister's drawer, her pain finding a page and lifting into song to fill a car, like a murmuration of memories whose underwings catch the sun, and so the sky glistens with them, feathered and swelled over the bridge as I wait for the light to change. Now that I'm retired, I slow down at yellow lights. I have time to wait. I might see a bald eagle or find the perfect prime numbers on a license plate. Time to look for saints and think about the close to gone, the snow's forgiveness or string theory. There might be even smaller particles than the electrons we can't see, tiny strings to name inside the tiniest thing, a raw, almost nothing vibrating. Sometimes I think I hear it or feel it, the way when I was 5, I sat with Mrs. Stewart at her desk during nap time because I couldn't sleep. The two of us in a dimmed, breathing room, a green gooseneck lamp arced between us, our pencils making marks, a small sound bent, a small sound of lines and curves unearthing, her face bent down, the pillow of her breasts in a flowered dress, that infinitesimal vibration between us, between the page and me, between a gliding eagle and me, between the falling snow and me, between Taylor's voice and me, in this car, on this earth, everything a part of every string. And then I was going to move into a few poems in my new book called To Eve. It's a book-length poem. Basically, when I found out that Eve was only mentioned 4 times in the Bible by name, I was just like, wow, that's kind of a lot of blame she's taken over the course of our history of humanity. So I basically, this is a book in conversation with Eve. And I'll read a few, like 3 or 4 poems from it. It must have been hard to be the beginning, the one pulled from a cage of ribs without the sweet smell of milk or symbiosis of skin. That's probably why you and he began your cleaving, already arriving long-limbed and flat-bellied. The only sanity would be to sleep next to him, to reach and find spaces in your darknesses under the stars. Both of you, motherless. I can see you wandering on the spongy soil where there's too much to harvest. Every tree humming with wind and bird sound. Ferns, generous, and those leafy walls of scent, lilac, jasmine, and their shadows. All the furred and winged animals seem indifferent or ornamental. Did you count the loud crows without numbers? Follow their spiriting from branch to sky, and beyond to the changing moon barely there, in the blueness? You were surrounded and uncertain, a world where a seed begets a tree its fruit, every stone in a perfect place, except the small smooth ones you might pick up. Is this when you spoke? Maker, the next time you want to make yourself into flesh and blood, place us in a mother. Let us collapse into her arms and no birth. So, yeah, I kind of imagined Eve coming up with that idea, like that we shouldn't be making people out of clay and bones anymore. And this is her still in the garden. The book sort of brings her life in the garden and then life outside of the garden. Past the shaggy fabric of willows, past the crow constellation dotting the meadow, to the branches reaching into the unflawed, blank sky, did you notice ripeness? Not this. Think wind, its sudden roar, its touch beyond a flash of sound. You understood instructions, but planted inside you was a little fist that wanted what it wanted. Did the maker say you could not fly? Well, your dreams became feathered. And then I have her obviously leaving. And this poem that I'm about to read is sort of the wandering that I have her doing. And this is a poem that was also, thank you, Jane, published in Quartet. I doubt you ate meat. You prefer to touch the softness of a cow's hide, sink into those large dark eyes. Your first blood was your own. The maker placed in you what you never emerged from, fallopian tubes and a womb. In the cool heaven of evening, did the maker speak to you? All those tiny pieces of light and one moon flung in blackness before the forbidding? And now borders uncrossable and fertile lands you must find. No more words from the maker, no more follow. What about a wax-sealed letter, a voice indecipherable, your world edged with thunder and turbulence in the firmament, your skin weathered, still hungry, you moved through the muddied riverbeds, picked mushrooms, unearthed wild onions. You ate what grew from the soil, picked up a stone, a smooth heaviness to hold. When you rested, you found a stick, drew spirals in the clay or sand, messages to no one. This was the beginning. You read the trees. Just a few more here. This one poem is a golden shovel. And I love golden shovels because you write into words. So the last word in each line is either a line from a poem or a whole poem. And this poem that I wrote into was by Lucille Clifton, who happens to be really one of my favorite poets. And I'm going to read her poem that is within my poem first. It's very short. It's called, her poem was called Female. There is an Amazon in us. She is the secret we do not have to learn, the strength that opens us beyond ourselves. Birth is our birthright. We smile our mysterious smile. That's Lucille Clifton, and this is the poem that I wrote. To rob an apple tree means there will be no forgotten apples, that there is someone who cares about an apple, doesn't want the good to rot, doesn't want the Amazon to wither, to lose its largeness in the orbiting world of us. Eve is the first recycler. She may have taken what is a God's, but it was a nourishment, an unwasting, the way we open every dark secret so that life is livable. How what we name becomes sayable. We cannot do the burying, cannot let skeletons remain and have ponderous weight, a borrowed decay to spread and sink. We all need airing to learn the generous currents of wind, the way emptied clothes dance on a line, the strength of something invisible that dries and satisfies. How one swallowed bite opens our eyes to hunger, gives us desire. There is a beyond, a vastness within ourselves. How we herald each birth, believe each history is a small, important story. It will be our tiny account, like a container of baby teeth, a birthright, crocheted or just woven. How we arrive to smell the hedge of jasmine and smile, only that. And perhaps the truth of wildness, our world making itself flecked, shadowed, and mysterious. How we bite into an apple again and again and smile. And sort of part of this book opens up at the end to, even though we are ejected from the garden um, and immortality and have to die um, because of actions in the garden, there is for me this sense of continuation. And I've just had a granddaughter, and this is a poem that refers to her. She might remember me, by which I mean this is how we are reborn. Our little cluster of cells contained by the skin will end. But I'm imagining one day she'll tell her daughter about a grandmother who looked in her eyes like she was the sun, that beautiful. To her grandmother who made her feel that everything was pulled to her. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Wonderful
Wonderful.
reading, and congratulations on your granddaughter. I was realizing as you were reading, I bet we could have a really fascinating reading based on contemporary takes of Eve. Thinking of even a local poet to the Philadelphia area who's been really active and kind of a big deal for a number of years. Joanne Leva has two poetry collections that she wrote about Eve, which I just put in the chat. And so, yeah, I bet lots of folks have poems about Eve, and maybe something to consider for future.
I love
So,
that idea.
yeah, it'd be fun, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
Um, Last but certainly not least, we have Annette Sisson, who lives in Nashville, Tennessee, with her husband and soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. She retired at the end of May from Belmont University, where she taught for 37 years. Impressive. Since retirement, she has traveled, bought a new house, put her old house on the market, and spent 2 weeks at the Sewanee Writers Conference, which I hear is a good time. Her poems have appeared in Birmingham Poetry Review, Pen Review, River Heron Review, Rock Paper Poem, Rust and Moth, Sky Island Journal, West Trade Review, and elsewhere. Her second book, Winter Sharp with Apples, I'll drop a link to that in the chat, was published by Terrapin Books in 2024, and her third book, Rhizomes and Bones, was runner-up in the Cider Press Book Award. In 2019, she won the Portwriters Collective's Poetry Prize, and in 2024 and 2025, she was a finalist for the Charles Simic Poetry Award. Her poems have placed in many contests, and more than a dozen have been nominated for Pushcart and Best of the Net. Annette, thank you so much for being with us and for helping close out our reading.
Well, I'm delighted to be at this reading. I love the concept of these two journals coming together. And sponsoring people who have been published in both. Quartet has felt sort of like a home for me. I think I've been in it 3 times, but also I just love the journal and the editors. And I did have the pleasure of meeting both Jane and Gail. Gail's no longer with the journal, but Gail and I keep up. Um, and then 1Art, Mark, you were a tough nut for me to crack. And Melody kept encouraging me to, well, try again, because Melody is my writing partner. And so I'm going to begin with the poem that you accepted. But first, I do want to say that it's a pleasure to read with Cora and Melody and Sarah. I really enjoyed hearing your poems. And so I feel like I'm in good company today. So this poem is called Samaritan, and it was published in 1Art, and it was in Winter Sharp with Apples, which came out in October 2024. Everything else I'll read today is later than that. And this does not show me at my finest hour because I am the speaker of this poem. Samaritan. Empty stomach, too much to drink. I abandoned my coworkers, fled the party to sprint home to my parents' house, cradled in a suburb 20 miles away. I studied the car keys, assumed my feet the safer choice. Blocks later, beside the interstate ramp, I tripped face down, too broken to rally, before your convertible sped toward me. You pulled over, folded me into the passenger seat, covered me with your coat. At the complex, we paced the parking lot, followed a long wall to the street lamp and back, you bracing me under the arm. In patches of grass, I vomited wine, raved about my life, boyfriend on the East Coast, mother just diagnosed, my plans for grad school unraveling. Inside the condo, you spread a herringbone blanket, steered me to the couch, untied my shoes. When morning poked through the blinds, I surveyed a room I'd never seen. You emerged, dressed and clean shaven, early 30s, brought coffee, a glass of water, phoned your office to say you'd be late. Once my peers made it to work, I called in, reported I was found, your face as blurred to me as your name. Was it John? Brian? Hard to recall. But when you asked me to choose jelly for toast, reciting options like pop songs with hopeful titles, your voice lifted me like an engine humming, leather jacket around my shoulders. And I was a lucky girl, really lucky. The next poem was published in Quartet, and it's the most recent one in Quartet. It's called It's in Rhizomes and Bones. It was a runner-up with Cider Press. It's still questing for a publisher like Melody. You know, I just write checks. No, you don't write checks. You just you hit that button, and it's so easy to do to submit your manuscript yet again. This is called Moose Wilson Road, Wyoming. And Moose Wilson Road is a real place outside the Tetons. In the photo, a moose chomps on gooseberries. She seems to smile, side-eyeing me behind my camera. Something about a moose strikes me as human, perhaps the kind I'd rather be. We'd sighted our first earlier that morning as the wildlife caravan pivoted from the resort out for a day in the Tetons. Under light, cracked, dark, she clopped down a neighborhood street as if she'd just walked her calf to the bus stop to wait with the nattering herd. That evening, our van maneuvered near a bull moose munching willow. He lumbered through scrubs to find the tender shoots, snapped withies, his antlers wide and low, hide scarred by brushwood and weather. Another rolled his shoulders in a river sliced with ice, dewlap below surface, his rack cupped in supplication, like knotted hands, fierce and graceful. Something always stirs, half hidden in the thicket, something of ourselves, a sudden communion, a cry, maybe a prayer, some kind of wildness. And while we're on the subject of wildlife, I'll read this poem that came out recently in Porchlight. It's also in Rhizomes and Bones. It's called Familiars. Last April, I squirmed against the pillow, windows open. Coyotes howled, seesawing alien octaves, lifting me from the sheets, the whole world blotted out by sound. Next morning, the terrier scrambled to sunlit scat on the path not 5 feet from my bedroom, pile large enough to fill a shovel. This wild ritual in spring, vocal, fecal, marks their mating, a bonded pair joined in chorus, or a family, pups herded back home. Tonight, our clan gathers for the holiday. Daughter and sons, grands, aunts, 2 dogs. We take stock of our divided lives, swap chocolate, teas, coffee beans, stories. After dessert, my son steers his retriever to the front yard, scurries her inside again, eyes flaring. Did you hear that? He asks. I cock the door, pop my head into the dark. Coyotes nipping at stars, their wails scaling the hills. The next poem is very short. It was published in Susurrus, and I guess they liked it. They nominated it for a pushcart one year and the best of the net the next year, so it must have fallen just at that right time where you could do that. This poem is for anyone who is struggling or in despair, but I have to admit, I had my students in mind when I wrote it as they came back from COVID and really, really struggled. It's called Earth Will Curve You to Its Orbit. Make your sadness a thick door, the color of storm. Push against the gale that knocks your ribs, rocks the trees, sky whirling. Listen. In the dark, owls shriek, bush crickets croon. Howl until silence enters. The next poem is pretty new. It's forthcoming in Swim every day. It's not yet in a book manuscript because I'm just writing poems to see what happens now. It's called Thrust, and the epigraph is from Shakespeare's Hamlet. The readiness is all. Like a throng of haints, clouds hang above the hills, gray underbellies heavy, snagging treetops. Through my drizzled windshield, I see the pall open, release, rain pelting the mountain shoulders. Wipers squeak across glass, not dry, but not wet enough to glide. I'd rather be soaked through, or else parched. No more the drip and damp of halfway. Caught in a pause, stymied between bluff and plain, thunder and desert dust. Let me tumble into chaos, thrust myself into the light blinding squall of will be. Okay, so now I'm going to read 2 more poems. I think that's it. Yes, and these are the 2 that were finalists. This one in 2024 for the Charles Simic Prize, and the next one in 2025. I mean, frankly, I was happy to be a bridesmaid both times. So this is this is about my mother's family and about my grandfather, who died before I was born by about a month. So I never met him, but she loved him. It's called Deep in Milkweed. My grandfather shuffled his family to a few sloping acres he'd wrangled in the country a crudely framed shack, shallow footings, foundation, studs, flimsy roof, no insulation or running water, a single wood stove, old sheets for bedroom walls. He'd thought to finish the house by fall, collapsed into pneumonia, lost his job. Winter crept in. His sons lined the tar paper shell with newsprint. They slept in mittens, coats over sweaters, 3 to a mattress. Between coughs, he swore he'd plumb the place, put up drywall when spring swept away the ice. In the warm seasons, he prayed each day for easy breath, died before the parched leaves dropped. His children, angular and thin, rambled the hill deep in milkweed. Sharp pods scraped their skin as they scanned for monarchs. Tufts of floss released, ribboned the empty heat, the sky. And the last poem I'll read is a sonnet. It's my daughter had a bad breakup, and that's all I need to say, I think. It's called Bowl Shaped. Tonight, my daughter founders at the ocean's edge. Light recedes, tide, seagulls keen, her love a hollow whelk. The life she built with him spreads across the water, eddies for a season, fades into waves. Once a swell in my womb, she flooded the heart's chambers, pressed into ribs. Now I watch her retreat from strand to mounds of slender seagrass, cross her arms, run each hand up and down the muscle, cradle herself. I recall her newborn skin, soft as sea foam. Even rocks surrender form, consign themselves to beach, to dust. Here on this coastal bluff I stand, the bowl of my body molded like wet sand to the shape of her want. Thank you.
Annette, that was a wonderful reading. Thank you so much. I wonder if it's all those years of teaching, but you can really feel the range of your vocabulary coming through in your poems.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, yeah, loved it. Excellent. So thank you everyone for being with us for this collaborative reading between 1Art and Quartet. We're going to move on to the Q&A and community time section now. Give me one sec.